I'm sure a ton of you already know that in Black Ops 6 Zombies, there's a dedicated melee slot where if you hold down your melee button, then you can pull out a knife that actually does a decent amount of damage, at least at like round 4. But one thing that I learned not too long ago is there's actually plenty of ways to upgrade this knife, and it actually makes it pretty powerful and viable throughout the later rounds, so that made me wonder, can you complete the Liberty Falls Easter egg with only using this knife? First, I made a loadout and I made sure to put Aether Shroud on, and I also couldn't just go into a game with only a melee weapon, so I put the least useful thing to me, which I decided was the Sigma rocket launcher. I started off with turning on the Rampage Inducer just to kind of speed things up a little bit, because when you spawn in with armor on round 1, it's really not that hard, even with the Rampage Inducer on and just a knife. But that didn't last too long, because the second I noticed the knife was already 2-hitting on round 4, that's when I instantly turned it off because I knew I would have got overran. It took painfully long even just to kill all these zombies, and it's only round 4, but after that I was left with a decent amount of points, so I made my way and started opening up some of the doors around the map. I was going to need every advantage I could get throughout this run, so I did things like the vending machine Easter egg to try to get some good free stuff, and I also tried to do the pool table Easter egg to get free points, and then when I tried to switch to my gun, I pulled out a Sigma and then remembered the challenge. But after that, I continued on throughout the map, and I'm not sure how many people know this, but at the Arsenal machine, you can even upgrade the rarity of your knife, and it actually makes it much better. Not really sure why you would upgrade your knife if you're bringing in a gun, but it's always an option. Even with this upgrade though, I was still struggling against round 5 vermin somehow, because you can't really melee these guys without them getting a hit on you, so you kinda just need to take it slow. Once they got me 1 hit even, I kinda started to rethink this challenge, but I kept going. And one reason I kept going is because I knew I had Melee Macchiato waiting for me, which is a perk literally specialized for melees, which is absolutely perfect for this challenge. I'm not gonna lie, this perk is really bad, some might even call it terrible, but where it's all we can really use, it helps a lot. It doesn't only give you the little like melee kung fu kind of effect with your fist, but it also increases your damage with your knife, which is mainly what I would be using. And that's just because when you try to punch a zombie, the windup is so long and you often take some damage when you're trying to kill them. Because I was finally able to one-tap the zombies again, I decided to get started on the Easter egg, and the first thing I wanted to do was sit in the graveyard and wait for the groundskeeper to spawn. Sometimes he can take forever to spawn in, but luckily in this game I spotted him just after I entered the graveyard and got the toolshed key. Before I went and actually opened the toolshed, I also pack-a-punched my knife, which is another thing I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't even know about, and this gives it a huge damage increase, which I was actually really surprised on how big it was. But after that I went to the shed and grabbed the handbrake, and now it's time to start on the next part, which we need the water valve for, and then I headed to the bowling alley to finally start the water pressure step. Now this can take a while even if you have an upgraded gun, so I wasn't really sure how it was going to be with a knife, but it went surprisingly well, honestly. Anytime the zombies were running up on me, I was just able to quickly one-tap them, which was really nice. The only issue is when they start coming in too fast for you to handle, and they got all grouped up and it takes forever you to deal with them, and it also gets very dangerous, like right here when I got trapped, and thankfully I had Aether Shroud to get out of it. Not only could I escape from that horde, but I was also able to build up the water pressure with this Aether Shroud, and because I have the augment that allows me to have 2, I also used my other one, and that basically filled the pressure all the way. Now there's one final part to get the jet gun, and for this we need a mangler cannon. Now usually I'll just shoot off the mangler cannon from the first one that spawns and it'll drop, but I wasn't entirely sure if you could knife their cannon off. I honestly didn't really know how knifing a mangler would go in the first place, but I was willing to give it a try when I saw the first mangler round this corner, and to my surprise, not only did the mangler cannon drop, but he got absolutely obliterated. And you might have noticed that little boxing ring sound effect, and this is when I figured out that Melee Macchiato just makes your knife do crazy amounts of damage specifically against bosses. So after all, maybe this perk isn't as useless as most people think. But anyway, I continued into the electric store and found something that I never even knew was in the game. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little scared, because that honestly caught me really off guard, but after that I just continued on going through the piles and eventually got the electrical wires. Just like that, I now had all the parts to build the jet gun, but actually building it was honestly a huge struggle because it was on a vermin round, and these things are just so annoying to deal with a knife. I eventually just used a concussion grenade, which allowed me to easily kill them, and then I ran up and built the jet gun. It's pretty painful how I did all that just to not even be able to use the jet gun against the zombies, but I am going to allow myself to shoot the jet gun only at the parts that we physically need for the Easter egg. I'm not getting a single kill with the jet gun, so if you ask me, I still think this counts as a melee only, but I ran around the map and collected all the parts that we need to build the LTG. The final part that I grabbed was in the church, which probably wasn't the best idea because so many zombies started spawning, but I eventually escaped and built the LTG. This is definitely the step when I was thinking about this challenge that I was most worried for, because not only do we need to defend this thing from a decent amount of zombies for a minute, but it's also going to spawn a really overpowered boss. If any of you guys have done the Liberty Falls Easter egg, I'm sure you know how tanky these bosses are. But at this moment, I was really only focused on keeping the thing safe because I had to run around like crazy to kill all the purple zombies that were trying to go in, and a few even did get in. But at the end of the day, I was able to finish with more than half of the HP remaining, which I was pretty happy with, and now it was time to deal with the boss, which in this case spawned a Mangler. If you remember what I said earlier about melee macchiato against bosses, well, this guy is no different because as soon as I started hitting him, you can see I'm doing a large amount of his health bar every hit, and this guy has an extremely high amount of health. So even just the knife can kill him quicker than honestly just about every gun can, which is crazy. I was honestly worried I'd kill him before he had the purple mist, which I needed him to be at in order to do the next step, but I ended up getting him there, and now I just brought the Aether Canister down to the trap and successfully got his soul in the Aether Canister. I went to pick up the canister after the trap ended, and there just happened to be an abomination there, so I started knifing it, and that's when suddenly my game just froze. It happened right as I killed the abomination, so I'm pretty sure it had something to do with him, but I waited on the screen for forever and it just never came back. Thankfully, Black Ops 6 creates automatic saves, so I was able to jump straight back in, but that definitely scared me, and this isn't the only time this would happen. Oh, and not to mention, when I got back in the game, the whole Easter egg step wasn't complete, so I had to go and redo everything. I first brought the Aether Canister down to the trap again, and when I hit the thing to try to spawn a boss in, this time it spawned an abomination, which is terrible because the knife is way worse against that than a Mangler. I still managed to get it in the trap and eventually kill it, and after that I was finally able to move on to the projector step. All I did was set the projector to the opposite color that it told me, and then that unlocked the last Aether Canister. It was now time to do the second LTG step, which I wasn't too worried about just simply because of how smoothly the first one went. This time I got the Mangler again, and he was no match against my Pack 2 purple knife. I think I literally hit him like 3 times and he was already this low. But now I had a super big problem, which I kinda thought about ever since I knew how much damage it did, and when I hit him before he could even turn purple, he just instantly died, meaning I couldn't even really do the Easter egg step. Now I had to pass the whole round even just to be able to attempt it again, and I honestly didn't know what I could change, because if I couldn't get him low enough to emit the purple mist and it would just kill him, then there was nothing I could really do. I activated my Aether Shroud next to this guy and I phased through him. I'm not entirely sure if that did any damage or not, but for some reason this time I got him just low enough that he was emitting the purple smoke that we needed. Now from here on out I thought it was smooth sailing because I had everything I needed and dropped the Aether Canister on the trap, but when I eventually killed him to get a soul into it, this happened. So here I am loading up Call of Duty again, knowing that Easter egg step didn't save, and this would be my 4th time doing it. But I'm not going to make you sit through that again, so here's me putting in the final canister in the church. Just like that, it was now time for the boss fight, so I first wanted to make some final preparations and went around and bought some perks and even crafted some stuff. I could have fully upgraded my knife, but I chose not to simply because I didn't want to go to a higher and higher round where the boss fight would be harder, so I was going in with a purple tier 2 Pack-a-Punch knife on round 21, which I'd say is pretty good. I have to admit I wasn't even that nervous going into it because this knife was just carrying weight so far. The Manglers were casually just getting 2-tapped, and the main problem was weirdly just the zombies because even though I was 1-tapping them, there were still so many that I was kind of getting overrun. I believe in this boss though you simply just become more tanky because I was taking a crazy amount of hits just without even taking that much damage. I absolutely ran through stage 1 with no problem, and now an actual powerful boss was going to spawn that's much more powerful than the rest. Things started to get a little sketchy here because while I was trying to focus on the boss, I would just start getting flooded by zombies and vermin. I eventually even just made the choice to pop my Aether Shroud and purely focus on the boss because I knew I'd be able to do a huge chunk of damage to him with the knife. Also, I'm super happy I crafted those Semtex before I started this because they came in super handy. After just a few more hits on the boss, he was finally dead and it was time to move on to the 3rd stage of the boss fight. This whole time though, I've had a trick up my sleeve that I'm sure many of you have done before, and that's simply popping the Mutant Injection, and that absolutely destroys this boss fight. There's multiple super buffed up bosses that spawn, but during the 1 minute duration that they give you during the Mutant Injection, you can literally deal with all of them and have time left over. So just like that, the Easter egg and boss fight were finally complete with only a knife. This was surprisingly easy, and I recommend that you guys even try out just upgrading the knife because it was actually pretty fun a lot of the time, and you can make it even better because at this time I didn't have things like augments on my melee macchiato. But anyway, that is going to be this video, so if you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.